Good evening, Philippines. Maayong gabi sa Tibok Mindanao, Visayas, ug sa Luzon. I am Erik Espina. And of course, let's not forget our friends from Mindanao. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Ito po ang Republika at sa pagkakataong ito, ang ating pag-uusapan po ay mahalaga. Pero bago natin talagang tututukan yung pinaka-ulo ng ating pag-uusapan, itong ating guest ay matatawag natin sa simpleng pananalita. Siya po ang conqueror ng Camp Raja Muda. Nung amin po siyang binisita noon at nakausap namin, nung siya pa ay pinakapuno mismo ng CGPA ng Philippine Army, ay makikita o nababanaag sa kanyang mukha ang bigat ng kanyang tanggapan at ng kanyang responsibilidad. In fact, the best way to have described him in that meeting that we had was he had a warrior's face, because the weight of the entire office and the entire operations really bore down on his shoulders. I'm talking, and we're privileged to have none other than Lieutenant General Raul Urgello, former Commanding General of the Philippine Army, retired. Maayong gabi, good evening.
Good evening, Eric.
Yes. Just so our public and the new generation will be updated, can you give us a little background about who Raul Urgello is?
Well, I had served the armed forces, specifically the Philippine Army, for more than 37 years, starting out as a cadet of PMA.
What class was this?
1966.
Okay.
And then went to Vietnam in 1968.
Okay.
And then after
68 PhilCag?
Yes.
Okay.
Then went to few months from Luzon. I was assigned to Mindanao. So I was able to monitor actually the growth of the MNLF at that time, starting in 1970, and I was assigned there up to almost. I left the place almost in 1997. Give and take 2 or 3 years where I was transferred, or 4 years transferred to Manila. I served there for 17 years, mostly in Mindanao.
Do you think there must have been a reason why you were given the post, assigned to Mindanao? Because usually, if my thoughts are correct, they're usually assigned Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. But why were you, why majority of your time was spent in Mindanao?
Well, it seems that there were some things that you have to study and learn. And in my junior days, when the MNLF was growing,
you were a lieutenant then when you were assigned, or you were already
yes, I was. I was the first lieutenant.
Already, huh?
Just fresh from Vietnam. And I was hearing that there were members of the Muslim communities who were trained abroad.
Okay.
And
trained abroad meaning Malaysia?
Well, later on we found out it was Malaysia.
Okay.
And I even had the chance to visit Sabah. It was pointed out to me where they trained the batch 90 and the batch 300.
Batch 90 and batch 300?
Yes, there were two training groups. There were two groups who were trained there in Malaysia at that time.
But when you got to visit Sabah, you were not a lieutenant anymore, of course.
Well, I was already a brigadier general. I was a guest of the Malaysian intelligence.
And they were willing to show you the area where our rebels were being trained?
Yes. Well, goodness. That was later on, and I was able to tour actually the big, important, the major cities of Sabah.
They did this matter-of-factly, openly, even if you were still in the AFP at that time? Goodness.
Well, they were trying to warm up our relations because they were thinking of putting up a consular office somewhere in Zamboanga.
Okay.
And maybe to remove our claims of Sabah. Because if we will accept a consular office in Mindanao, that might, lessen our diplomatic or ease our diplomatic relations with the Malaysian government.
You were assigned there 1970s in Mindanao.
Yes, Mindanao.
Because somewhere in the 1968, that was the time when Nur Miswari in UP started leading much of the organization. I think if my history is correct, he wanted to join the Joma season, but Joma season did not want him in his group. So that's and then I think this was after the operation, Jabida operation. That's when Nur Miswari started making a lot of noise in the University of the Philippines.
Well, I had a chance to talk with the Secretary General later on of the MNLF, Muslimin Sema,
Okay.
who became the mayor of Cotabato City later on. And he explained to me that they were members of the Kabataang Makabayan. And actually, it was Muslimin Sema when he was working for the Commission on National Integration under Dato Mama Sinsuat,
Yes.
where he was the prime selector of those who were sent abroad under the program, scholarship program of the Commission on National Integration.
Correct.
So it goes as far as that time.
And is there any similarity among these people? They all come from the same university, more or less.
Well, the Commission on National Integration have a scholarship program, and they were sent to the different schools of their preference.
Okay. And these are supposed to be for the not so wealthy brother Muslims at that time when they were sent abroad.
That was to give the Muslim Filipinos a chance to improve themselves under a scholarship program.
So when you went to Mindanao, you were in Maguindanao right away. You were assigned right away in Maguindanao.
Well, I was still in Cagayan de Oro.
First Cagayan de Oro.
But I was assigned with the intelligence.
Okay. And were you at that time already getting some information or any signs that there was going to be a liberation front that would eventually be put up?
Well, it was really difficult to understand at the time what was going on. I was also new in the business. But there were reports that with the advantage of hindsight will tell us that that is what really was going to happen. But it took us a few months or years to collate the information that, this is something that we missed.
Among all the personalities that you met as a young lieutenant, did you get to meet these people that would eventually form the MNLF, or they were just part of your subject as intelligence officer?
Well, for example, when I visited MSU,
Mindanao State University,
and I was in the canteen, somebody pointed out to me, Abdul Kair Alonto.
Yes.
And he was, I think, with I don't know if he was with batch 90 or batch 300.
Who was trained?
Yeah, he just came from, they were pointing out those who were there there was no trouble yet at that time.
Abul became eventually an ambassador, I think.
Yes, but at that time, that was 71.
How young were you then at 71?
Well, I think I was around 29 or 28. Yes.
And how was your first assignment? Was it, when you were assigned in Mindanao, was it more on the CPP, NPA, or was it supposed to be Liberation Front, or you were?
Well, when martial law was declared, and they rounded up the suspected members of the Communist Party, it was not really the Communist Party yet. These were the SDK and the Kabataang Makabayan. I believe that at that time there were only 120 of them, which exploded. The Communist Party of the Philippines in Mindanao exploded in 1978 in strength and manpower. That was also at the same time that the MNLF also went down.
At that time, which group, which faction was, to your mind, the greatest threat to the country?
Well, the immediate threat at that time was really the MNLF, because there were arms that they brought with them from abroad, from Malaysia.
From Malaysia, okay. And they admitted this to you? No, no. Or this was just
Well,
intelligence information later on?
We have several people who were in contact with them, like what happened, because the fighting started out really, the heavy fighting started out in Tran, Libak.
Okay, which is what area would this be in Mindanao?
Well, that's along the shoreline of Cotabato.
Okay.
Then there was a Muslim who was a good friend of mine, and he told me that there were ammunition which is higher than goes up to the roof of the house. That was this pile of ammunition that they had.
And you were what? You were still...
Well, I was already a
Captain,
major. Yeah,
major,
yeah.
yes. You were able to, in short, meet up with the local people and get to know them in terms of your service with in Mindanao. I mean, you were able to personally get to know them and have communication and contacts with them?
Yes, especially in the Muslim community, there were several of them who became my kumpare. Like if you start talking with the Sinsuat from Dato Puti, even the Magunda Dato who were still rising, I was the kumpare of Pua Magunda Dato who at that time was on dialysis. And almost all the group of the Ampatuans. I played golf with Congressman Dato Manong.
How did you cultivate these contacts when you were there?
Well, there were really, we would say that there were really Muslims who did not want this fighting to erupt, and then maybe some of them might have thought it was a big mistake. And from all over the different clans, there were people who did not really want to have this fighting going on. I had a talk with the father of Dato Puti Sinsuat, the late Dato Blah Sinsuat, who was educated before the war. He was educated in the United States, and we had a heart-to-heart talk. I said, "Why are we fighting?" Then I had a talk with now Attorney Mastura, Mike Mastura.
Yes.
He's a good friend of mine. Because as a matter of fact, when his brother came out and surrendered, I was the one who met him in Lugay-Lugay, squatter area in Cotabato City.
By the way, you're talking, all these principal personalities before are somehow still the principal personalities even to this day.
Yes.
Would that be fair to say?
I think so, because, Muslim Sema became the mayor of Cotabato City. Tukaw Mastura became the mayor of Sultan Kudarat. And, well, the Ampatuans. When the brother of Dato Andal Ampatuan surrendered in 1976, Bullet Boy, tawag natin noon, Bullet Boy. That was 76. We didn't know that later on that is the Ampatuans will grow very rich.
So you know all these people personally?
All over Maguindanao, from maybe Pagalungan, from Buluan, even in Sultan Sabarongis, in Dato Piang. Were very few people, even from the Christians in Cotabato. I was talking to them. They have never been there. In Buldon.
And how did they accept you? I mean, you're not Muslim, obviously, and you're wearing the uniform. But how was the reception?
I was really very well received. That's why I was surprised why some people called me at that time anti-Muslim. I have several very close Muslim friends.
And who were the people who called you anti-Muslim? The people who didn't like your effectivity?
Yes, maybe. Even even some of those who were with the other side, maybe we developed a friendship, like Muslim in Sema. He was caught, and I was his, in a way, I was the one who, in a way, talked to him when he was apprehended, and he revealed to me several of the things that he knew about the MNLF. Later on, he became mayor.
But in your discussions with these people, did you feel that they really did not want to go to war? They were just pushed into war? Or this was not really personal to them? It was not a personal struggle for them, but somehow pushed, funded, supported by, or there were other propellants that excited them to launch this liberation front?
Well, I think there were several factors that had happened. One was maybe the declaration of martial law,
Okay.
when there was a move by the government to disarm, collect all firearms.
Uh-huh.
And the Muslim resisted this.
Uh-huh.
And then there was the Ilaga movement. There was already a training of even before the Ilaga came out, which started the trouble.
Well, I'll stop you on Ilaga. We'll pick up from Ilaga when Republica returns. Nagbabalik po ang Republika. Kausap pa rin natin si Lieutenant General Raul Urgello, retired, former Commanding General ng Philippine Army. At masasabi natin conqueror of Camp Raja Muda. Let's start with where we left off. You were talking about the Ilagas.
Yes. It was really one of the contributing factors for the rise of
The Ilaga.
the increase of the trouble in Maguindanao.
Okay.
Then it went to Lanao
Okay.
because of this Ilaga movement.
Those who don't remember the Ilaga movement, maybe you can tell us what was the Ilaga movement and basically what was the group's objectives.
Well, these were armed groups who were in a way killing people indiscriminately. So it was really a bad group that I would consider that there was something really wrong with what they were doing, because this was an indiscriminate killing of.
These were not Christian
these
groups.
were Christian groups.
Christian groups,
but,
okay. Purely Christian groups.
Purely Christian groups
Okay.
that came out, and because of the belief
Okay.
of this they call it in the Cebuano lana, oil, which was their amulet or anting-anting that they said that made them invulnerable to gunfire.
Okay.
And that they became very brave, and that it was.
And their targets were often what?
The Muslim community was their target, because
These were the armed Muslim communities. Or even civilians.
That was the trouble, because there was an indiscriminate killing. I think that really led to this reprisal also from the Muslim side, because of the indiscriminate attacks that came from the side of the Ilaga. And there were some sort of maybe political instigation that came about, because at that time there were only two Cotabatos, the North and the South Cotabato.
Yes.
And the governorship for North Cotabato was contested now between the Christian and the Muslim. And there were more Christian voters in North Cotabato, so I think the national government tried to correct the situation, where they divided North Cotabato into three provinces to give a chance to the Muslim to have their own rule, self-determination, because the Christian have grown too much in population, and the voting population also went with that, and they could not be ruled by a Muslim anymore at that time.
The Ilagas were not supported by the national government, because there were talks that it was supported by the national government. It was to borrow the term, it was the modern, the old-time Asnawi, the rogue, the rogue of the MILF, pretending or a commander robot that could not be controlled by the MILF. Would that be a correct description?
I don't think so, because it can be proven by the arms that they were carrying. These were homemade firearms.
Homemade firearms.
They call it the pugakhang.
So hindi supported the national government?
The national government, if it will be supporting that group, it will be giving them high-powered firearms.
Okay.
But these were homemade firearms, which were just manufactured by water pipes.
Okay.
And armed with, they were using the shotgun bullets. And that was the main armament of this Ilaga. So, and it was just homemade.
So it was first the martial law declaration plus the Ilaga that provided the spark.
Well, the political situation also, as they were trying to get some sort of control over the political offices, And then there was already, when the martial law was declared, the anti-Marcos Muslims were
Movement,
left
yes.
out, like the group of the of Pindaton and the Matalams. They were left out, and in Mindanao, the Aluntos.
But there was no real intention of talking about a homeland at that time. Was there already? Did you feel at that time that there was already an identification for a homeland or a demand for a homeland? Wala pa.
Well, what I could recall was that from Dato Udtog Matalam,
Oh yes, the
they
MIM.
came out with a paper which was
Mindanao.
for the Mindanao Independence Movement.
MIM, yes.
Yeah, MIM. That was what started out. And then there was a response by the Christians, the local Christians, that there was the Ilaga movement because they were afraid of the well-armed. The Muslims already well-armed.
Where was the AFP in this scenario? You have on one side the Ilaga, on one side the Mindanao Independence Movement, and then eventually the MNLF.
Well, the armed forces really was lost by default because we did not have any troops there. I can recall when I was part of those who tried to organize the battalions in Cotabato and the 27th, we called it 27th BCT, Battalion Combat Team, had only strength at the start of only 130 people, where it was later on built up to more than 15 battalions. So there were only 2 battalions there, the 27th BCT, which later on rose to 400 men, and the 54th, I think, PC Battalion, which had almost the same number. So these were very small units, and the MNLF, we did not know that they were MNLF at that time. In Dato Piang, there were more than 2,000 of them.
Would it be correct to say that you actually have the issues in southern Mindanao, especially in Maguindanao and these areas where you operated, at the back of your hand because you know all these personalities?
Well, what is more important, I believe, is the cultural and the economic development. The culture that was developed there during the Muslim period in the early days was that this will, from the word alone, Maguindanao, they were more part of the water system there. So most of their towns are along the Rio Grande. The Christians settled in more stable surfaces, as you can see in the map. But when we started building the roads, the Christian communities progressed and left behind the Muslims who were more or less settled in the swamplands along the river lines. So with the economic progress of the Christians, the Muslims were left out. And you can see that even if you improve the road nets, which the government has done, there were unintended consequences. When the roads there were improved, all the roads now in Maguindanao were cemented.
Yes.
The business moved to Davao and General Santos. So many, you can see the line of rice mill along the river that were closed because nobody now was milling the rice in that place. And then there were no more, they ran out of trees, no more logging. That was one of the primary source of income. So the business, actually, the economic stature in Maguindanao area went down. But you can see that Davao and General Santos have been progressing.
So, from your perspective then, did you see all these different Muslim tribes identifying themselves as one nation, or you had cultural differences, ethnic differences against each other, which you cannot really say they belong to one nation?
Well, it's the same way with the Christian Filipinos. There are Ilonggos, Cebuanos, Waray-Waray.
And it's wrong to lump them all together. Is that what you're saying?
It's very difficult because they are situated far from each other, and they have also developed their own bias against each other.
Okay.
And but there is one common thing. There is the religion.
Okay.
And they are more or less affiliated with the waterways, the seaways. You can look at the name, the Tausogs, they are named after the people of the current. The Maranao are named after the lake people. The Maguindanao after. So these are more or less people who are more or less affiliated in the living on fishing, mostly. And it creates a different culture than compared to people who are more or less farmers.
Would it be correct to say that many of them identify themselves more as Filipinos rather than as the so-called Bangsamoro nation?
That's the one thing that I saw. When I traveled to Sabah, the Malaysians called them Filipinos.
Okay.
When they said, you want to see the Filipino communities?
Uh-huh.
I said, of course. Then they pointed out to me the houses on stilts, which had very dirty surroundings, and said, do you want to look at the Filipino market? And these were the wet markets, which were also very dirty. And this is what we call the Filipinos. But if they come to the Philippines, they are called Tausogs, they are called Maranaos, or Magindanaos.
But you seldom hear them say that they are Bangsamoro. They would rather be called Tausogs, Maranaos, Samals.
Yeah, I've never heard them call themselves Bangsamoro.
Okay, so where did this, oh my goodness, so where did this all come about? And because this is the political dimension for the struggle, supposedly, by these intellectuals, that they prefer to be called Bangsamoro. And yet, the ordinary Filipino Muslim do not consider themselves as Bangsamoro.
Well, maybe it will not stick. If you will call yourself whatever you will call yourself, other people don't consider you as that. So there is really, in a way, a sort of identity crisis here. Because the Malaysians call them Filipinos when they go to Sabah.
And you really don't, in your 30 plus years in Mindanao, did you really see this sense of identity, different ethnic groups saying that, no, we are not Filipinos, we are not, we are Bangsamoro?
Well, because of my long stay here in Maguindanao, when I come here and the Muslims, when I went to CGEC,
yes,
and we have several Muslims who were, they could not feel comfortable with the people here in Manila, but they felt comfortable with me because I've stayed there in Mindanao. They considered me as part of the of Maguindanao.
Who understood the culture? Who understood?
Yes, and then we understood the places where you will go or places where not to go.
So how did the Great War, how did it develop? And if you were going to repeat the entire scene, would you take development? Would you take the peace process? Would you give them 5 million pesos? Would you give them 10 million pesos? Would you